Hi everybody, Eve Everett here, and this time around we're going to talk about what's sold on eBay. Modern and vintage common magazines, catalogs, and cards, plus some really cool bolos if you're a child of the 70s and 80s. Selling past issues of magazines can be quite profitable. In fact, eBay has an entire category dedicated just to back issues of magazines. I think it's important to look for magazines that have a very specific content. For example, here I've sold 2 copies of English Home magazine from 2003, and I picked these up at the Weigh and Go. Actually, I think they're 25 cents a piece, so I got them for a total of 50 cents. And I had them for about, let's see, I had these for about 3 months. And I sold them to a nice lady a few states away. I shipped them media mail, and she paid 15 bucks for the 2 of them. So although I like to aim higher in terms of return on investment, $15 minus that includes shipping, by the way. So 15 bucks minus media mail, shipping, and 50 cents is probably, plus the fees, probably put me around 11 bucks or so. So not bad at all for 2 measly magazines. But I think the trick to doing magazines, if you're going to be looking around the Weigh and Goes or just in yard sales, and I'll show you a few bolos later on, the more specific the magazine, there's a better chance of it having driving a higher price because there's less of a run, print run for the particular magazine. Like, for example, some easier ones to find, I think, are Victoria magazine put out by Hearst, the older, not the new stuff, the older things from the mid-90s. And there's a ton of other ones out there, and we'll get into that very shortly. I bought a lot of 34 Esquire magazines from the 1930s and 40s. Some of them can do quite well, and also there's an Esquire of Muhammad Ali that goes for at least a couple $100 if you can find it. This particular one was a mid-1930s, and as you can see, the magazine has frays to the spine, some creasing, and I got $25 for this one, and I sold the other 33 or so. Each of them went in the neighborhood of $19 to $40 a piece. Vintage catalogs from the 40s and 50s for Montgomery Ward, Sears, and another store called Alden's have done very well for me over the years. The trick to selling catalogs of that age from the 40s and 50s is you have to go long tail on them. I generally put them up in the 4th quarter where people are feeling nostalgic, especially if you grab those Sears Christmas books. Now, there are a lot of them actually that are now online. However, many of them from the 40s and 50s haven't been scanned and put up. First of all, people still like to touch things with their hands. So looking at something on a computer and having something to flip through isn't the same, at least not yet. And so even though times have changed, there's more things online, there's still a lot of things that aren't, and the older catalogs from Montgomery Ward and Sears are among those. So I've been pretty lucky, and I've gotten anywhere between $45 right up to $120 for a catalog. For example, I had about 12 Montgomery Ward catalogs from the 40s, and I sold them for $50 a piece, and I think I sold every single one except one that was water damaged. So take a look, be willing to go long tail, because you're definitely going to have people come in and undercut the same catalog by a ridiculous amount of money. They go away, just be patient, and you'll have a very good sell-through on these if you hold out. And I probably had mine up for about, on average, 6 months or so before they sold, but they can be very profitable. And I got them at a specialized vintage clothing auction. I bought the entire lot of them for $45. So by the time I sold, 2 of them, I was more than ahead of the game. Here's a 1950s Alden catalog that I sold for 40 bucks. Here's another catalog from Sears that I sold for $75 and went out to Chicago. And then I had another one. Actually, I had two copies of these, and a second copy of this went for $75 as well, and I shipped that to China. This is much more recent, but still vintage Laura Ashley Home Furnishings catalog. As you can see, I don't know, I guess in the mid-80s, all of us kind of lost our minds and just viciously attacked our homes with way too much floral. But they're a real hoot to look at, and people still enjoy them. I posted this in October of last year and sold it, looks like January 4th. And I was just shipped that one to Illinois for $20 plus shipping. Industry-specific books can also be in very high demand depending on the profession. This is a museum-printed book of their archive of floral fabrics and textiles. And I got this on a buying trip, and it took a while for me to sell. This probably took me, if I recall correctly, about 14 months. However, it did sell for $175, shipped actually back to the UK where it originally came from. Licensed items such as Thomas Kinkade, or in this case Margarine Baston, can do quite well. People collect them specifically, and so if I go to a weigh and go, I will just pick up dribs and drabs of whatever particular licensed person it is. Here I have a lot of a small can that's decorated and a writing pad, magnet, and pen, and I sold these for $22. Another example of this that was very quick to leave is a Susan Wingett designed flower and check stationery set that was sealed. I picked this up at a weigh and go, and I posted it for $22. And let's see, I posted that last June 8th, and I sold it on June 11th. And remember, a lot of this stuff that we're talking about in this particular video, you can ship all this media mail. Catalogs, stationery, I would say, would easily fall under that. Anything that's media-based, either something you maybe read or write on or use. Wrapping paper, I've sent media mail. Check out the requirements on USPS if that's what you use, but media mail is the cheapest way to go, so whenever possible, if it makes sense and you're able to use it, use it. And finally, we have this set of Tory Burch note cards. They came in a small box, and they were an incomplete set, and some of the envelopes had some scuffs on them, but I still was able to sell them for $21.50, shipped media mail. As I promised, I just wanted to point out some very quick BOLOS. Do you remember these Lifesaver candy gift books? Like, I would always get these gift book, storybook things from Lifesavers during Christmas growing up. I hated these things. Like, they would just, for some reason, end up getting all stuck together. It just ended up being a sticky, awful mess. However, it's safe to say that if you can pick up a set that has its contents in it still, and this Lifesaver gift book is from the 50s, you can get maybe $338.99 for it. And that I found to be quite a shocker, considering that I really loathed these things growing up in the 80s. But I think that the older the candy, as long as it's intact, the more money you may get for it. Chiclets from the 60s, $259. Who knew? But there you have it. Also, I wasn't able to find it, but about a month and a half ago, there was a box of 13 containers of Dynamints from the 70s, the fruit ones, the purple and orange ones that looked really gross. But anyway, Dynamints from the 70s and 80s, a box of them of 10, I think, went for around $250 as well. And I also just saw a vintage Dynamints plastic container of just plain white mints go for $34 sealed. So hey, you know, if you had a ultimate hoarder of a relative hoarding candy from the 70s, 80s, and earlier, don't throw it out until you've checked it out on eBay. As I talked about before, sometimes specialized magazines in particular subjects can do very well. And you may want to be on the lookout or maybe scope your grandmother's or great aunt's house for some of these Miss magazines from the 70s because someone was able to get like $119.99 for several of them. I think they got 9 there. And also check out the fact that someone sold a lot of 17 fantasy sci-fi magazines from actually relatively recent ones, 2006 through 2008, and got 119 as well. Vogue always does very well, and I'm finding that ones from the 90s are really starting to pick up. They are a real pain to hold on to because Vogue magazines from the 90s were huge. I mean, they were like catalogs. However, they are now starting to fetch good money. So if you see Vogue magazines from the 90s, I would definitely pick them up, especially if they're Vogue Italy or Vogue Germany editions, because those do even better than the ones that you see here. Brooke Shield Vogue magazines or Brooke Shield anything where she's on the cover seems to be really picking up as well. I don't know why that is, although I think she's great. But she seems to be really kicking butt in the magazine past issues for some reason. Also, these back issues of software magazines can be a real hit or a real miss, but I would look them up because, for example, Byte magazine, BYTE, and this one, Soft Talk magazine from the 80s are doing quite well. So if you're at a Way and Go and you happen to see several of them lying around in the bin just sitting there collecting dust, they may very well be worth your time for $179.95 on eBay. So check them out, validate everything, make sure we're all on the right path here, but I do think that Vogue especially has always done well. The older the Vogue issue, the better it's going to do. But you can lot them up, you can sell the older ones like from the 40s and 30s separately. And like I said, magazine past issues can do very well. Just get the hang of it. Doesn't really take that long to do, and you can do quite well with that as a a side venue to make even more money. Well, everybody, have a great week and good hunting.